Namely, prosecutor Mitzi Shanna Steiner and Magistrate Judge Sarah Cave sought and approved the raids of Project Veritas. Oh. And so the head of security has been hit with a subpoena on that, but it wasn't a fight at a hotel, okay? It was trafficking of humans. We had 3 buyers who didn't work out. They were interested in buying it, and then they heard about the freak-offs, and they're like, somebody brings out the black light, and they're like, oh, we're not interested. Deal's off. Diddy back in court, trying to get out of court, trying to get out of custody and go back home. His defense team has made a big proposal telling the judge, we'll give you basically everything. Okay, we're trying to sell the plane. We'll give up Diddy's passport. We'll give up the family's passport. He's sticking around, but the judge yesterday said, no, you're not going anywhere. Now, what's curious about this prosecution is it is led by an all-female team. Meredith Foster, Emily Johnson, Madison Reddick Smizer, Christy Slavic, and Mitzi Steiner all coming together as the power Puff Daddy prosecutors. Yeah. So you can see that that's who's going to be leading the charge, Assistant United States Attorneys, and they're referencing Mark Anganilafilo and Tenny Garagos, who I believe is related to Mark Garagos, another infamous defense attorney. But what's curious about this is, according to our friends over at MarcoPoloUSA.org, which has the report on the Biden laptop, Mitzi Steiner has had some overlap as a U.S. attorney, as a prosecutor, with some other people you may know and appreciate. In fact, remember when we had the Ashley Biden laptop problem, the saga where the FBI raided Project Veritas? They say throughout this investigation, the New York Times was illegally receiving tips from the Southern District of New York, which is where we're at now. Namely, prosecutor Mitzi Shanna Steiner and Magistrate Judge Sarah Cave sought and approved the raids of Project Veritas. Oh. Which even liberal civil rights groups stridently oppose. So that's this woman right here, Mitzi Steiner. Looks like that's her name. And you can see Mitzi Steiner is attorney, U.S. attorney. She's worked as a foreign law clerk to the Supreme Court of Israel, as a law clerk on the Second Circuit for Judge Robert Sack and other people. She's a graduate of Yale, where she served as the executive editor on Yale Law and so on. She served as a scheduler and executive assistant for the ambassador to the UN. And she served as a White House intern for the Office of the Chief of Staff prior to that. Now, in this filing, you can see here is what they have submitted. On September 18th, that's the date of this recording, to the U.S. Department of Justice. They say, all right, dear Judge Carter, okay, we know we're going to be in your courtroom like in an hour, and the bail appeal is coming from Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, aka Love. And for the reasons set forth here, we think you should hold him in custody. Why? Diddy is a danger to the victims and to others. He's brought physical violence, and he's obstructive, and he's a risk of flight, so you got to keep him in custody. Now, the relevant detail was already set out yesterday, and we read that here. As we know, Diddy was arrested on September 16th, then arraigned before Judge Robin. That was yesterday. Now, right after that, the government sought his detention on these grounds after the arraignment. They said he's dangerous, he's going to obstruct things, and he's going to flee. Even pretrial services, the government's own independent court extended compendium, thinks that he should be in custody. Now, after an extended bail argument, the court found that Diddy had failed to rebut the presumption of detention in this case because it's a sex trafficking case. Now, Judge Tarnofsky noted that the crime of sex trafficking is something that happens behind closed doors, and said that we can't monitor what you're doing behind closed doors and your little freak-offs. The court found that further detention was warranted based on Diddy's history and characteristics, saying that there are also indications in your history and your characteristics, Diddy, that I think are a reason why the presumption in favor of detention has not been rebutted. Now, prior substance abuse, and the fact that this alleged violence seems to occur hand in hand with times when you're not even in control of your own actions because of that substance abuse. Saying, Diddy, your lawyer today asked me to trust you and to trust him. And I don't know that I think you can trust yourself. And I don't believe that counsel, your lawyer, has the ability to control you. And so given the very significant concerns that I have, particularly because of substance abuse and what seems like anger issues, you're not going anywhere. And so in addition, say the prosecutors lawyers, the court noted that the weight of the evidence is significant given that the government has proffered that there are multiple witnesses who are saying that they have witnessed significant serious violence. And they'll testify to that, presumably. Finally, the court concluded that the danger posed by Diddy was, quote, quite serious due to his access to weapons, use of violence, and coercion of witnesses. Now, this court should reach the same conclusions, saying the lower judge, Judge Tarnofsky, Robin, finding are well supported by the record, and they support holding him in custody. And the defense also fails to seriously contend with the findings that are related to his dangerousness and the inability to monitor or control him. So here's why he's dangerous. Now, despite public statements by Diddy's lawyers trying to minimize his conduct, and they did, they said, hey, if people want to freak off all over the place, they're free to freak off, okay? They want to get freaky with it. There's a whole song. Didn't he write Jiggy with it or something? Oh, no, that's Will Smith. But yeah, like the rap game, right? Everybody's getting jiggy with it all over the place. So, so let them freak off is their defense. But they say no. Despite all of that, it's not minimizing. These aren't freak offs, okay? These are people's heads getting smashed in. As alleged in counts 1 and 2, Diddy used violence, threats of violence. He used coercion to cause women to engage in commercial sex acts. In other words, he committed sex trafficking, a crime so serious that Congress has determined that there is presumptively no condition or combinations of conditions that will reasonably assure the safety that he's coming back. It's such a bad crime that we can't let you out because you're going to jail forever. Now, the defendant's crimes have spanned over a decade and continue to this year, putting others around him, including victims and other witnesses, at risk. Now, the nature of the offenses and Diddy's history demonstrates he's got to be detained. The repeated acts of domestic violence, which are recurrent, as noted by Judge Tarnofsky, often occurred behind closed doors, are not disconnected from this offense we're talking about today. The physical force and coercion that Diddy repeatedly used during and apart from the freak-offs caused the victims to engage in the sexual activity, right? So now he's going to say, no, it didn't. They came here, man. They wanted to be a part of the Diddy empire. They wanted record deals. I told them that, whatever, but they were here for that reason. And they say, well, that's sex trafficking, right? And Diddy's going to say it wasn't physical. And they say they've got videos, so it should be pretty easy to prove. Now that is sex trafficking, they say. These acts of physical force, of violence, are corroborated not only through victim testimony, but also through, among other things, victim communications with Diddy spanning years of the charged time period. Witnesses also who were present during and after the freak-off, so not victims, not the actual receivers of the abuse, but people who saw the abuse, which is bad because that's firsthand direct evidence. Video footage, same thing there, right? If he's on there, people are saying, stop, no, and he's beating the crap out of them, smashing their heads into stuff, that's not good. Photographs capturing the injuries, law enforcement records, among other things. The same is true of his coercion. Now, the communications between Diddy and multiple victims, which include communications sent as recently as this year, capture victim resistance to engaging in the freak-offs, even in light of his abusive tactics. Now, his years-long use of force and coercion speaks directly to dangerousness. To be clear, the government says, despite the indictment naming one victim in count 2, and we're asking about this, how many of these victims are here and who's coming out of this? This case is not just about one victim, okay? The government's evidence to date, here we go, let's see, includes Diddy's own communications. So we're going to show you his text messages that he's going to say you're misinterpreting, demonstrates that Diddy has used force and coercion against multiple victims, they say. In addition to these women, Diddy has assaulted a host of other individuals, including his employees and witnesses to his violence. For example, he directed his rage towards his employees and those close to victim 1 who had seen him physically abuse victim 1 by throwing these witnesses against walls and onto the ground, choking them, throwing objects at them, among other things, particularly when they attempted to protect victim 1. Okay, so other people are like stepping in to stop him from killing this person, and they're like, yeah, we'll testify. So it's stacked. Now, in doing so, Diddy has also demonstrated that he is not only a danger to the victims and witnesses, but is also obstructive and willing to engage in whatever is necessary, including violence, to keep them silent. All of this violence against victims, witnesses, and others factor into the analysis of his dangerousness. Now, equally as we explained otherwise, Your Honor, he's already tried to obstruct this case. He should be held accountable for this. He says that he contacted the witnesses, but that's not obstruction. But they say, yeah, it is. He's been aware of this for a long time. He knew about this since January 2024. He even knew earlier than that because they filed a civil lawsuit against him, which opened a lot of this up, November 2023. Now, counsel for Diddy even acknowledges that Diddy has contacted witnesses in this investigation. Apparently, the lawyer said, go ahead and do it. But then they say that no, we've studiously avoided interviewing grand jury witnesses. So we're only talking to some witnesses, but not others. Prosecutors write, the fact is, Diddy has personally and repeatedly contacted multiple witnesses, including one that he himself knew was a grand jury witness. He contacted them, including at least one who he had been in contact with for years, after they were served and leading up to the date date before they were going to the grand jury. Now, Diddy's behavior illustrates the point that they can't even control this guy. So contrary to the council's protestations to the contrary, there's also ample evidence from which to infer that Diddy's contacts are not innocuous. The government has multiple examples where he's trying to feed victims false narratives of events that they observed or that they personally experienced, right? No, that's not what happened. Remember, you took those drugs. You wanted to. And they include communications that were even made in the aftermath, which he was clearly concerned about law enforcement. For example, Diddy said something like, I can't really talk on this phone. You feel me? I'm not even supposed to be talking on the phone, he said. I can't be on these phones and crap like that. You feel me? I can't even talk on the phone. Like, please, don't send no text or do nothing. People misread and stuff. He's right about that. You got the Proud Boys sitting in prison for 24 years because of their texts on Telegram. But finally, it bears noting that within the first 24 hours of this case's unsealing, there are already new concerns about new witness interference, as well as interference with a fair trial based on counsel's attempts to discredit one of the victims. As the lower judge wrote in her earlier decision, one of the pertinent concerns here is the power imbalance in this case. Diddy, as alleged in the indictment, is a man of immense power and influence. Consequently, he can coerce victims. Just yesterday, during the bail argument, defense counsel impugned the allegations made by a victim, challenging the motivation and the timing of her claims, which of course we're going to do that. Did she blackmail him for $30 million? That's pretty important. In addition to being factually inaccurate, this sort of attack comes close to the limits set forth in the criminal rules, that you can't go after the victim. Victims have victims' rights, right? They can't be like abused by defense attorneys or whatever the rules are in their local rules. It can also be expected to intimidate other witnesses who feel tremendous pressure to not go up against the defendant, right? That's the thing. If you start belittling the victim, then others won't come forward and it destroys the government's case, and so there's rules. The government therefore requests them not to violate this by not publicly challenging the credibility of these prospective witnesses or by publicizing information that might be admissible at trial. And the government says they're trying to obstruct these proceedings now, even through the media, doing it right now by disseminating materials to the media. Now, both at argument and yesterday, they say Diddy has emphasized that he's cooperating with the government. The court should take that argument for what it is. Okay, it's theater. It's designed to convince this court that he can be trusted and he's not a flight risk. But make no mistake, Diddy's recent behavior shows he cannot be trusted or controlled. As the judge even said, your lawyer asked me to trust you and to trust him, and I don't know that I think you can trust yourself, Diddy. Indeed, since at least January, when Diddy was unquestionably aware about this, he knew he was being investigated, and he's still engaged in multiple freak-offs. Man, he can't get enough. FBI's like knocking on his door. Hey, we're just checking on you. People are swinging from the chandeliers and stuff. He's like, you want to come in? Like, no, but we are going to note this down because we're going to be back here to arrest you in a couple months. Some involving the interstate transportation of individuals who participate has continued to use narcotics. They've contacted multiple witnesses. He thinks he's totally untouchable. Do you know why? Because he's been untouchable for 30 years. Some of this conduct has even taken place since he got in New York City. Yesterday, his defense attorneys were like, Your Honor, he's here on his best behavior. He's not a flight risk. He flew to New York in case this happened. They're like, texting Diddy. They're like, put away the baby oil. Put it away. Cops are on the way. They're coming over now. His defense attorney said that he was going to be there to sit it out. Okay, the prosecutors are rubbing their nose in this one. Yeah, sitting it out maybe for another reason because of soreness. They say that Diddy's conduct is demonstrably not cooperative. Okay, he's here to get his freak off, not cooperate with anything. Highlights his inability to abide by the law or counsel's directives. And so this is consistent with the law. All right, Epstein we held in custody. The defendant's attempt to distinguish sex trafficking cases are unavailing. All right, a review of other case law, particularly where we had obstruction, showed the following. Remember, in Epstein, Judge Berman ordered the defendant detained on dangerousness and obstruction, even though it took place a year prior, U.S. versus Epstein. He said, no, he's got a pattern of sexual misconduct. He's got buying off victims and other things. In this case, they kept him in custody, denied bail in this case. Yeah, Rainier was up here, and that's the Nexium case, right? Noting that the defendant posed a danger to the community and didn't release him. So Diddy, you're not going anywhere. Now, finally, the new conditions that have been proposed by Diddy, they also fail to adequately protect the community against his dangerousness. These conditions don't even talk about his obstruction. Further, even though they contemplate him not having staff and visitors, they can't protect against his dangerousness. He's got assault rifles, personal assistance, security, and so he can just pop off against anybody. And so the prosecutors, they contend that this guy's seriously dangerous and no conditions of bail, no combination of release will secure his appearance, and so he should remain in custody. So they submitted that. The defense attorneys submitted their response, and then we appealed appeared inside the courtroom. And what you'll notice is that we're back with Inner City Press presiding Matthew Russell Lee, and he is going to walk us through what happened in the New York courtroom, and we'll go through it. All rise! Judges in the court says, please be seated. Everybody sits down, and now we're talking about detention of Diddy. Will he be released? We're in courtroom 110. Sean Combs is at the defense table. He's still in his black shirt, though. He's not in a tan uniform. I wonder what happened. 2 U.S. Marshals are seated behind him. On the bench is Judge Andrew Carter. Now, we know why we're here. The judge says, government prosecutors, would you care to make your argument? Prosecutor Emily Johnson stands up and says, Your Honor, thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon. Your Honor, I want to start by just saying that these freak-offs were elaborate. They began in 2009 and they extended all the way into this year. And the freak-offs were arranged with his entourage. And Diddy used narcotics so that victims could continue and endure. Ketamine, GHB, and others. And Diddy would bring all these people into this room and he would record these freak-offs, at least in part, to use them to blackmail them. We have an email where a victim says that you were going to make me, and this prosecutor, Emily, she's like, Your Honor, I'm not going to say it on the public record. A victim says, you were going to make me, I can't even, or you were going to leak some FO type of stuff, like some F around stuff. So a different victim wrote, Your Honor, he said he was going to expose me with the sex tape. I was drugged, is what she's going to say. And that's just 2 examples. And so, Your Honor, it's pretty rich when the defendant, Diddy, and his lawyers submit something that was filed today that accuses our victim of extorting him. $30 million is what they're claiming. Diddy's the only extorter in this courtroom, Your Honor. Now, we seized 6 guns, okay? They were in Diddy's home, and he had access to them. And so we are focused on the defaced guns now in his closet. And this is not about security, but it's about dangerousness. The security team is the same one he says would monitor him, and so he doesn't even need those guns. Now, the head of his security has now been served with a subpoena, and so given what we've learned about his role in the offensive conduct, head of security might be charged too. And basically the argument is, Diddy's going to say, those aren't my guns, those are my security guy's guns. And the security guy's going to say, they're not my guns. And why would legit security guy need unserialed guns? So now about the hotel assault, says this prosecutor. Your Honor, yesterday, the defense counsel called it a fight in a relationship. That video where Diddy's running out to try to give that woman her cell phone back or something, and, you know, she slips and falls accidentally, and he accidentally drags her back in while her head's banging around on the ground. It's a misunderstanding, obviously. And so the head of security has been hit with a subpoena on that, but it wasn't a fight at a hotel, okay? It was trafficking of humans. Now, the defendant, Your Honor, also had a freak-off on March 5th, 2016. We have evidence that there was at least one commercial sex worker there in that room during the assault. She isn't even wearing shoes. Look, she's in danger, Your Honor. You see, and Diddy storms out in a towel. So we're still talking about this video. So they have one commercial sex worker there in the room. We also have a message from the victim, Your Honor, saying, I still have crazy bruising. Now, he claims that he wanted to go get his clothes back, right? He was just a misunderstanding, wanting to go get those clothes back. But that's not what happened here. She tried to escape a room with Diddy and a commercial sex worker, okay? She fled without shoes. She was so freaked out. She's like, I'm not putting that anywhere. Ah! And then he was chasing down. It's not funny. Now, immediately after the assault, Diddy sent these messages. He said, call me. The cops are here. I got 6 kids. Yo, please call. I'm surrounded. You gonna abandon me all alone? Now, Diddy knew he had done something that could elicit a police response. And so he covered up what he did. This year after the surveillance video came out, only then did he admit that it was him. Now, yesterday it was claimed that his clothes were taken, but that's not what happened. Why drag the victim back down the hall to the room? Because she forgot something else and he just wanted to show her what it was. He needed her help to carry it out. Yeah, probably. So indisputable evidence makes clear you cannot take Diddy at his word. March 5th, 2016 is far from Diddy's lone act of violence and obstruction. Yeah, but nobody's charged him for any of it. And he's not even charged for the March 16th event, as far as we recall, because it's old. But freak-off activity is the core of this case. They use force, coercion, and drugs. And so our investigation is ongoing. They're probably going to charge him with more crimes. Half a dozen escorts is just the tip of the iceberg, and the number of escorts who have participated in these freak-offs. This case is charged sex trafficking by force, fraud, and coercion. The acts were not consensual. And I want you to consider these other cases, saying the defense is arguing that anyone in a freak-off wanted to be there. Yeah, that's what they're saying. You want to get freaky, jiggy with with it, go for it, man. But that's not the law, Your Honor. They say when people are threatened with exposure and are beaten, they cannot consent. They're out of consent. That is trafficking. Victims' heads were slammed against car windows, Your Honor. Now, here is some text message, Your Honor, that we see. Someone sent Diddy this. They said, when you get effed up, Diddy, you knocked me around. I'm not a rag doll. I'm someone's child. Don't beat me. Now, we have witnesses who witnessed the injuries as well. This conduct happened behind closed doors, in houses, in hotel rooms, and in cars. Judge Tarnofsky was concerned enough about this that she found she did not believe that the defense counsel can control the client. And so consider the Mercedes case also in this circuit, which reversed the decision to release the defendant. So we don't want that to happen here, Your Honor. In other words, this prosecutor, we don't want you to get reversed, so don't let him out. Now let's turn to obstruction, saying witnesses have expressed extreme fear of him. They have indirectly contacted a victim in November of 2023. Constant contact with witnesses to the charged conduct. After a subpoena, before the government got to them, they're trying to reach out to people. Two of these examples, there are communications between Diddy and a witness. There's 13 contacts. Judge says, wait a minute, 13 contacts with two people? No, sorry, 14 contacts between the defendant and the witness, between one person. And also, he reached out to a witness that he had not been in contact with for several years after they got the subpoena. He used intermediaries to do it. And he recorded the conversation on another person's device. In November 2023, he twice called a victim. On November 19th, he received a text message from this other person, and in response, it reads, I feel like I'm reading my own sexual trauma. 3 pages in my experience. Your Honor, Diddy has called her, gaslit her. He's trying to convince her it has been consensual, telling her, no, you wanted to do it. You liked it. Remember? You loved it. You said that. He repeatedly said he was not supposed to be speaking on the phone. He tells her, or this witness, do not text me. He said, if I support, there's nothing to worry about. And what does that mean, right? If I have the support, there's nothing to worry about. What does that mean, Your Honor? It means money. So Diddy wrote, he told his financial advisor that should not make a mistake and not get that rent paid. Okay, that was obstruction. He was trying to pay someone off. That's what's going on here. He was feeding people with false cases. And the prosecutor says, Your Honor, I want to go through all these cases with you to show you this. And the judge says, that's not necessary. Okay, please don't lecture me on the cases. I'm familiar with those cases. Well, Your Honor, just recently, there was a civil lawsuit. Last week, Dawn Richard filed a civil suit. She was in a band, also with Miss Harper. Miss Harper issued a statement after 128 phone contacts, and so we didn't deal with Lauren Ray's case. Judge Fox ordered detention, even on one victim, but the judge found that that was corroborated by documentary evidence, and so even a judge right next door is doing this in a civil suit, and so we're good. So anything else, says the judge? Okay, got it. Anything else, prosecutor? Anything else you have for me? She says, well, a few more things. He goes, how many more things? She says, 3 minutes. Just give me 3 minutes. He says, okay, go ahead. Traveling to New York, she says, also doesn't address the fact that he's not a danger to the community. Okay, I'm seeking detention here, but I note that the bail package does not have enough conditions that focus on obstruction, and so it couldn't, okay? He's been involving other people, and so we can't let him out. Their bail package is insufficient, so he's got to stick around. Your Honor, he should be detained pending trial. Do not let him out. Okay. Judge says, okay, thank you. All right, defense attorney Mark Ignifilo stands up. He says, Your Honor, let me start with Miss Harper. Now, I was called by her and a lawyer. I said, do you want to make a statement or not? And I later found out that she did. And then the second lawyer, Tenny Garagos, and says, Your Honor, and Miss Harper felt that she was being besmirched. And so we did speak with her at 2 a.m. on the 11th. So we did. So he did talk to her because she felt she was being besmirched. And we talked to her at this time. So they say we reach out to victims or to other people. Miss Harper, we called her. And yeah, we did. Okay, but after speaking to her, says the judge, what would be the reason for Diddy to continue contacting her? Okay, he talked to her, then she got a subpoena. After they spoke, why does he need to continue to talk to her? Well, she was concerned that she was in the media, says the defense. Another defense attorney says, in Your Honor, today, I've also brought today the head of Sage Intelligence. Okay, we are proposing that Sage Intelligence personnel, all former law enforcement, will be monitoring the residence of Mr. Combs 24/7. So we have private security, we have a security firm that will be making sure that he does not leave. They will have 1 or 2 employees there at all times. There will also be a visitor log. Okay, only pre-approved could come in. They're going to follow your court orders. We could give the list to the court of people who can come in and go. Mr. Combs will not have a cell phone or access to the internet at all. And that way, there's no witness intimidation. Okay, it's completely nullified. Like he literally cannot get on the internet. Now, having Sage Intelligence on site will do what we have to do, even 3 there if we need to. You want 3 people there? We'll put 3 people there. We don't care. If you don't believe believe that Mr. Combs' actions in coming to New York are only about a risk of flight? That's not true, Your Honor. It shows he is deeply respectful of this court's authority and he's responsible. He's here. Now, Mr. Combs knew he was under investigation and he gave us his passport. We didn't take it. This isn't defense lawyer theater like they suggest over there. We took the passports of 5 of his family members. We have a letter of intent to sell his airplane. We had 3 buyers who didn't work out. They were interested in buying it and then they heard about the freak-offs and they're like, somebody brings out the black light and they're like, oh, we're not interested. Deal's off. So this defense attorney continues to go on. The judge says, can you get to the point? What's your point? It shows he's trustworthy, Judge. He's not a defendant who says, come find me. In Maxwell and Epstein, he cuts him off. Well, how does that relate to danger and obstruction? If he was aware in April, why was he contacting witnesses if this was coming forward? Why was he doing that? He says, Your Honor, no, he wasn't. A woman contacted him, okay? She said that she'd gotten a subpoena and we told him, don't speak to her. So he didn't do that. Okay, talk to me about danger. They say he's a danger to the community. Talk to us about danger. Your Honor, people who are dangerous and who are a danger to the community are people who are contemptuous of the court. But Mr. Combs has never been contemptuous of the court. He's always been extremely reliable. In fact, he had a case in New York in 1999. He came to court every time. He showed up on time every time, didn't have a warrant at all. Now, under your plan, says the judge, will Mr. Combs have employees who work for him? Well, Your Honor, they handle his finances. They will work for him, but they're in California. And under your plan, would Diddy be allowed to leave his residence? No, Your Honor. No, he wouldn't. He'll be there all day. And the security, they could be there in the house? Yes, Your Honor, they'll be there. They'll be there in shifts. And we could put cameras up filming 24 hours a day. They could do spot checks to make sure he's not using the internet. We can make sure it is as secure as we need to make it, okay? There are already cameras in there, so that's fine. The judge says, but the video about dangerousness, that video where he's trying to return that woman's purse or whatever, he says is troubling. He was 40-something years old. What was he doing beating women in hotel rooms and dragging them back inside? What's going on? Oh, Your Honor, well, he realized he has a problem with drug addiction and anger, which is perfectly valid. I mean, Hunter Biden hasn't been charged with anything. He beat the hell out of a bunch of women. There's videos of him. He had crack all over the place. He's got crack at the White House. So who cares? He thought, I donate to Hillary Clinton. I donate to Democrats. I'm a big Democratic donor, all the things. So he thought it was good enough. So it's drug addiction and anger. Should be case closed. Hunter Biden didn't even get charged. The DOJ was covering up for him for years. So he went into rehab for a period of time. And the woman in the video also went into rehab around the same time. Okay. So there was just a drunken, cracked out, freak off spat. Says they loved each other too, just like Fannie and Nathan. The written messages are heartbreaking, Judge. Now the sex and the violence were totally separate. Okay. They were motivated by separate things. The way they chose to be intimate, the way they would bring a third person on, okay, they chose that. Might not be your cup of tea, but if they want to bring in a third party, they're free to do that. Now, judge says, all right, well, what does that have to do with him punching her or throwing a vase at her? What does that have to do? He wanted to give her flowers. Here, honey, sorry that you tripped. Have some flowers. Take them right now. What's love got to do with that, says the judge? Well, that was jealousy from infidelity, okay? He just got angry. So that was in both directions, all right? Mr. Combs and this other person. And so the violence is from that. And so the judge is like, okay, so there is violence is what you're saying. So that's great. So what's your point? You just admitted there's violence. And so you say that they invited a third person in. Now, if that person is a commercial sex worker and they traveled across state lines, isn't that a problem? Well, I've spoken with the agency, Your Honor, and they say that they're not even paid for sex. They're not paid for sex. They're escorts. But if they feel like having sex, then they do it. So it's not even actual prostitution. It's not even commercial sex trafficking. It's just like you're going to hang out with somebody. And if you want to bang for however much money they're paying you to hang with them, that's fine. Now, Agnifilo, the defense attorney, so they're free to do that. It's not illegal. And the former governor of New York, he did it. Yeah, Elliot Spitzer. Yeah, what happened to him? That's right, he was. And he was not prosecuted. And so they're prosecuting Mr. Combs for it. He wants to get freak off, with people who come. It's every politician in DC's doing it. So let's get back to that video, says the judge, and that physical beating, because the judge is like, yeah, you're right. Everybody else is trafficking in commercial sex work. Got it. So what are we going to do about this? All right, let's talk about the vase again. So why isn't that relevant to dangerousness? He says, well, it's not sex trafficking, right? That's assault. That's domestic violence. It's not sex trafficking. So call that what it is. Charge him with assault. Charge him with domestic violence. Charge him with criminal damage, with disorderly conduct. Okay, those are misdemeanors. Maybe significant damage. You bump that up to a felony because it hit her in the head or whatever. But it's not sex trafficking. Now, Now, even if you don't trust him, Your Honor, trust the bond package, okay? $50 million bond, no internet, Sage security. That's going to give the court comfort that he's not a flight risk and he can prepare for his trial. Now, we had known this was coming. If we wanted to run, we could have run. We would have left in March, but we didn't. And Your Honor, I want to tell you about his background, okay? He was an actual altar boy, like literally on an altar. The judge says, altar boy, how far back are you going? Like, is this like, what grade is this? Your Honor, I'll just tell you this. He watches a sermon every day, okay? He has done a great deal to earn this court's trust. I ask you to release him, so please do it. Thank you. The judge says, okay. All right, well, I've heard from the parties, and I find that the government prosecutors have proven that Diddy is a danger and that the bail package is insufficient on the risk of flight. Diddy's sitting there saying, dang it, I'm going back in, not getting released. So the judge says, all right, so let's do the initial conference here. All right, where are we at with discovery? What's the status of discovery and evidence being exchanged from both sides? Government says, Your Honor, our discovery package is going to include photographs of physical evidence from the March searches and from this week. We're going to include the freak-off supplies. There are a large number of electronic devices. We have a full 35 extractions ready to produce to the defense. We'd request a status conference in approximately 90 days. Defense says, Your Honor, well, given that he'll be in custody, I can't for now consent to any exclusion under the Speedy Trial Act. So if they want 90 days, like that counts against them. We're not waiving any time. We want a speedy trial right now. He says, well, I can set a trial date if you want to do that. If you're not going to waive time, I'll set a trial date. That's fine. If I can't try it, I can find a colleague who can. We'll set your trial right away. So he reaches out over to the government. He says, okay, well, how much time do you actually need? Whispers over to the 4 U.S. attorneys. I think they're all female over there. Meanwhile, Garagos whispers over to Sean Combs, Diddy. They talk about 14 to 20 days. Okay, well, how about 2 weeks? Well, what's your position on speedy trial then? Well, I'm not prepared to waive that. So it's not 90 days, but we'll do it in 14 to 20 days. Okay, are you going to waive the time on that? No, I'm not prepared to waive it. Okay, well, how about the date? So let's pick a date first. Okay, what date do you want? How about October 9th at 2 p.m.? Does that work for the parties? Yes, it does. Great. Government, what is your motion? Prosecutor says, Your Honor, we move to exclude time under the Speedy Trial Act. Defense, what's your position? I can't consent, Your Honor, but I'll know more on October 9th. Fine. I exclude the time then. He doesn't give us any specifics on it based on the circumstances of the trial and in the interest of justice is the language we hear. So I'll exclude the time and the case carries on. Now the judge gives us an update. He says, we received some calls today from people who say they have evidence for this case. That's interesting. We referred them over to the U.S. Attorney's Office. What about the local rule? Okay, so judge says people are calling us. I'm just giving it to the government. Now, what about the local rule? Remember that the prosecutor was upset with the defense bringing up the fact that apparently this woman is threatening or was blackmailing or attempting to blackmail Diddy for $30 million or whatever it is. What about local rule? Government says, well, we wanted to flag the comments about the victim. We're not requesting action now, but we just want you to tell them, remember the rule. Defense says, Your Honor, it would be better if we put Diddy in Essex County, the correctional facility, rather than in MDC. Government says, well, Your Honor, that authority is given to the Bureau of Prisons, so I don't think there's anything this court can do to put its thumb on the scale. So you don't get to make like a notification, send him to Essex or send him to something. Prosecutor's like, he's going to MDC. Anything else? Nothing. Okay. Get me a joint letter on all this by Monday, September 23rd. We are adjourned. And so that is the latest update on the Diddy case. But Diddy is not going anywhere. He'll probably file some renewed motions later down the line. We saw the same pattern with Ghislaine Maxwell. She tried multiple times to get out of custody. He'll do the same, and we'll be here to cover it. Thank you for subscribing, my friends, as this coverage continues. So great to have you here for our lives. We'd love it if you knew somebody who might be interested in this live, if you shared it with them. That way we can have them join us on the next one.